Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Noyes. I'm the executive director of the Maine Grain Alliance, and I'm so excited that you're able to join us for our first of our Organic Grain Expert office hours. This project is part of an ongoing series of events that we'll be sharing with you throughout the year as part of our Transition to Organic Partnership Program grant in conjunction with the USDA. We are going to give different perspectives on how to access our regional grains and different thoughts around how we can help to improve sort of the value chain and understanding of how grains come from the field to our tables. The Maine Grain Alliance is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit that exists to inspire and empower people who are building those regional grain economies. We do that through a whole series of events outside of our farming centric ones, including the Kneading Conference, the Maine Artisan Bread Fair. We host events in and around Maine, but even outside of Maine. We help to restore seed. So we take seed from seed savers from across the world and grow them out to commercially viable quantities for farmers based on varieties that do best in our climate. And in general, serve as a community connection piece, interdisciplinary, cross-industry network of friends who help to lift each other up and find new ways to champion local grains. Um, so I'm super excited to be able to share that we are today talking about the perspective of a bakery buyer, and we're going to be taking this from sort of the lens of we know we probably have a mix of some farmers and some bakers with us today, and then that we'll be viewing this later on. And so we want to help to kind of shape that path a little bit about how a baker is able to come and integrate locally grown grains into their product mix. What are the types of considerations that go along with that? Quality, protein, fermentation behavior, but also how do you choose an organic grain supplier? How does that relationship work? And so I'm super excited to welcome Jeff Dec, who's a friend. He's a member of our board of directors, has been a long time champion of local grains. I share this probably every time that we have Jeff present, but I just think it's so cool because Jeff first became involved with the Maine Grain Alliance by coming to our signature event, the Kneading Conference, which you can find details about on our website, which always takes place the last week of July. We'll have about 30 different types of workshops and panels, discussions. And Jeff came as a work study member and happened to meet a lovely woman named Lisa at that event. And they later serendipitously became married, moved to Maine, opened a bakery, started a family, and we couldn't be more happy to have them with us and to help to share those perspectives. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to kind of give an overview of his bakery, but I really want this to be as much as possible an informal way. Feel free to ask. This is about asking questions. You can drop them in the chat and we can answer them that way, or you can unmute and or turn on your video and say hello and ask questions that way too. We do have some one-on-one sessions at the end of this that are available if anybody wants more time and asks specific questions about their business or their idea. The first one I think is booked up in about a half hour from now, but there's lots of them available after that in kind of 15-minute increments. And so with that, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Tristan. I'm pleased to be here. Thanks to Tristan and the Alliance for organizing this and making me part of it. Thanks to you guys for coming out and catching up with us. Yeah, Brazen Baking is, like Tristan said, it's a project that started in 2015 with me and my new wife. Well, we weren't married at that time, but we had just met and fell pretty hard. And what's funny is that we actually met at our second Kneading Conference. We had both been at the year prior. We didn't meet that year. So you got to go more than once. But yeah, we met and she moved up here. I had been living in Maine in the Mid-Coast area, and I had been doing some baking prior to that. And my transition to Maine was at working at a few different organic farms, and at that time, my focus was do a little bit of mixed vegetable production. But I was involved with dairy. I was an apprentice through MAFCA at the Appleton Creamery. Many people might know that goat farm. They did farmstead cheeses, award winning. Caitlin Hunter, some mentor of mine. After that, I was on the island of North Haven for 2.5 years, helped start Turner Farm, an organic goat herd out there. We were sprouting grains for goat feed, learning as much as I could about, hay and growing quality feed for livestock. We also did a lot of mineral supplementation. I've been pretty obsessed with nutrition since pretty much like early 2000s, around the time that I did my first stint working in a wholesale production bakery that was in Portland, Oregon. Actually, it was wholesale and retail, called Pearl Bakery. It was around a long time. If you ever went to Powell's City of Books, it was about a block away. And they did fabulous French pastries, bread. I worked under a guy named Tim Healy, who has Little Tea Baking, also in Portland. He kind of spun that out as his own projects years later. And he was on the Coupe du Monde de Boulangerie, which is the U.S. Olympic baking team essentially. And he was the baguette baker and the bread baker on their team. They also do viennoiserie, which is laminated doughs, and they do like decorative bread in that competition. And so Tim had learned a lot from some of the best bakers in the States, and he was kind of my mentor there. And I spent a year there. I worked the graveyard shift, and I worked 4/10s of the graveyard shift, just mixing dough and working at the bench, hand shaping, mostly yeasted pre-ferment breads. We also did some levain style or sourdough style breads as well. It was pretty focused on the white flour. We were using regional Western Washington or Eastern Washington grain there, and we had kind of a mid-scale miller roller mill that we worked with, which was pretty cool. And that was kind of a newer thing to the bakery there, where they weren't just going with the biggest conventional stream of flour quality that they can get. Learned a lot about, how dough behaves and running a mixer and all the different variables and timing, doing dough punches. We did a pretty big production there, well over a ton of dough in a shift. And when you've mixed it, pulled it out of the bin, stretched and folded it once or twice during its fermentation, and then benched it with a bunch of other bakers, it's a lot of work. And so anyhow, the smell of it and just the pace of it, and I just always been curious with fermentation, and it's kind of got into my skin a little bit, but I went different ways. In 2005, I wound up I had been working in some restaurants and just couldn't really stop doing things in the kitchen. And I found myself figuring I better do something to learn more. And I found a small culinary school in Boulder, Colorado, called the School of Natural Cookery. And it was a bit of a mentorship there where I was with like 4 or 5 other students. And we did a whole 6-month curriculum, 4 days a week, studying natural food preparation. It was kind of a plant-based focused school at that time. And the focus being on energetic nutrition, learning from this unique philosophy that a woman had developed about intuitive cooking, and basically learning how to cook with what's available rather than recipes. So it's not recipe based. It's learning the functions of ingredients, and going from there. So I had discovered that I was very much a kinesthetic learner, and it was the right thing for me at that time. And I learned a lot, and it gave me a nice framework to relate to the natural world as well. So from there, I wound up doing a couple of leadership roles in various food service. I ran a summer lodge kitchen, which was kind of cool. They had like a humane or a conscious kitchen philosophy, and we partnered with a local farm. This was in Grand Lake, Colorado. And we partnered with a local farm and got a lot of our vegetables and fruits through the season from them. Even though we were end of the road for the food service trucks, we did have to use a bunch of food service. we were serving local raised bison meat. And It was a pretty unique experience. One of the first times where I actually got to really just order directly from the farmer and have that relationship. I also I was a director of food service at a ski academy in Crested Butte, Colorado for about a year. And that was another unique experience trying to basically take a kitchen that had been using heat to serve type food from Cisco and transitioning to a scratch kitchen, to try to help these student athletes achieve their best, potential. And it was a great experience. I wound up moving on from that and moving essentially out to the West Coast again. Worked in a couple of dairies out there, learned about raw milk, and really went down the rabbit hole with studying with the Weston Price Foundation and a lot of the stuff that they're interested in, which includes traditional grain preparations. And all through the time I was kind of baking sourdough, I maintained a couple cultures and messed around with a lot of different things, including whole wheat, whole rye, and whole brown rice. I had three starters and really went down the rabbit hole for a while, baked a lot of bricks. And I wound up learning when I was a student at the School of Natural Cookery. I did learn that I could do whole wheat baking, and that was something that after my bakery experience, I didn't really think I could pull off. I just thought it was like impossible. I'd done some Tasahara bread baking, and I had no success at all, even mixing a decent dough. But once I did this training with the bread instructor there, her name was Susan Cheney. She wrote a book called Bread Time Stories. It's out there on Amazon. You can get it for dirt cheap, and it's a great book. It's a little old-fashioned, but she was one of the original partners in the Moosewood restaurants. You may be familiar with their cookbooks. Learned a lot from her. Actually wound up in the Twin Cities and studied a little bit with her in the St. Paul area. That's where she was from. At the same time, I helped Alan Scott, an oven builder, do 2 oven building workshops and met some interesting bakers, including a guy named Dave Bauer that's going to be doing the keynote this year at the Kneading Conference. I'm really hoping I can get there. We also toured up into the Thunder Bay area of Ontario and went to a bakery there that was wood-fired, and they were using red fife wheat, which I had never really, been exposed to. Learned that it was one of the 4 parent wheats that were the primary parents of all the wheats that were developed here in North America since. And I thought that was pretty neat. And the grain just had a really unique flavor from anything that I had experienced. That opened my eyes to like grain varieties and how that can really make an impact in the flavor of bread. And so kind of opened that up. And let's see, in 2009, I wound up in Maine. I also was asked to be the bread instructor at the school as my mentor had retired. I was like, well, I just moved to Maine. I mean, I've been living out west for a long time, including basically based in Colorado, and I managed to do it. The way it worked, I would go out there 2 or 3 times a year and do a 1 week bread making intensive. And then we consolidated. In further years, the school moved out to Ashland, Oregon, and so we consolidate the bread program with different students and taught a lot of those over the years. There were some gaps in there, but that was really informative for me because I was just having to figure it out as I went. And I had Susan's training. So the cool thing about what we did there was we used 100% whole grain. We milled it in-house, literally in the garage on a small, I believe it was a Retzel mill, a motorized Retzel mills. There was a company out of Idaho. I called them numerous times to get help on learning how to mill grain. And they were really helpful. Anyhow, yeah, that was an informative part of what I was doing. But yeah, about was it 2015 that we started? We found through just asking around at a farmer's market, we found a baking location in Waldoboro. My wife and I lived about 30 minutes from there, and we were able to use it a sublet with another food business that was there. Once once a week. There were some mixers and some ovens. So we were able to really start our business on the cheap. Both of us were, working regular jobs, mostly my wife through a catering company and me doing other stuff. I was still kind of involved at a few of our farms in our area. And then um, we kind of grew that business over the years. The first year we did one bake per week. We would go to farmers markets and trade with the vendors, even though we weren't actually attending the market. The next year we got into the market. We started doing like two bakes days a week. And it kind of just organically grew from there, and eventually became a full-time gig for one of us. I maintained a winter job full time, and then eventually we were kind of able to just shift into doing it full time. In 2019, we moved the operation to Rockport, which is less than 10 minutes from where we live, and it was a game changer for us to be able to scale up a bit. And the hardest thing about doing what we do, which is mostly sourdough breads, is keeping it all on schedule. And so it's kind of people say, oh, baker's hours are terrible, and we kind of made a conscious decision early on that we were going to try to make the bread on a regular schedule that worked for us and not sacrifice too much. Well, it's evolved since then, and we've had two kids. They're 6 and 8 now. And we went from doing one farmer's market per week for quite a few years. Which is the Camden market. We started in the Rockland market about 4 or 5 years ago. 2 years ago, we were asked to join the Belfast market, and we decided to take a chance at that. So we're doing three farmers markets per week the last 2 years. Which was a lot, but we've taken on some help, and we've had some part-timers. Last year, we had one full-timer join us. We're shrunk back down to just me and my wife right now, but we are looking for help for the upcoming market seasons. We decided it was just a little too much time and craziness to do three markets, so we're shaving it back to just two on Thursday in Rockland and Saturday in Camden this year. We really like the Belfast community has been great support for us over the years, but it was just too much. And it's kind of good to, push a limit, realize you're over the line. But yeah, it was the way we do it is, we mix and refresh once or twice during the daytime, build out our sourdough in the evening, show up in the morning, mix the dough, try to keep it moving. And try to be out of there normal time that you would end your workday, 4 or 5 p.m. Sometimes we push after 6. And on a market day, there's an early start for one of us. So yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of time, but we're pretty passionate about what we do. And yeah, we've been able to focus on using a lot of Maine grown grain. I just put together some numbers just to give you a sense of the scale of what we did last year, which was 10 tons of Maine grains, over 8 tons of Milanese Victoria, which is a roller milled bread flour that we get. It's out of Quebec. We're able to get that through our distributor. It's a certified organic up there. And we also do some baking for a local shop 3 times a week that uses King Arthur special patent. So we've been using a fair bit of that to do their baking. That's a project we've been doing now for 1 year. And it's been a lot of work to take on their baking. They're a fine food shop that does a little bit of everything, and was feeling like they couldn't keep doing their baking in-house. And so we've taken on that doing their baking, and it's a lot. But that's the yeasted bread, moves a little faster. And yeah, that's our baking operation. We're able to use, let's see. So yeah, I just want to give you a list of the grains that we use. Probably all things about wheat. We're using mostly Maine grains. We are able to get some organic whole grain from Rusted Rooster Farm. We're trying to get some more now. And we've also used Aurora Mills in the past. Currently aren't using much of their stuff, but I want to reconnect with Sarah and try to get that in. What we found with the smaller organic mill growers buying direct that are trying to sell direct, it's the hard part is getting their stuff to your place. We can receive pallets, which we do, but yeah, keeping it, you need a lot of space to store pallets, so we can't get too much at any given time. So we've had to really focus on the distribution that works for us, and we get a weekly potential delivery from a local food service company that really is focused on bakery. And they've been a great partner. They get our Quebec grown roller mill flour to us and can also get some of the main grains, which is nice because we buy main grains by the pallet just about every month in the busy months, and every other in the slower months, which for us, being market bakers, the slower months are going to be, basically January, February, March. We are actually doing a year-round farmers market currently. That is nice to keep us in the mix and keep us connecting with the farmers, which is one of our big, focuses is we're doing food because we want good food too, and it's great to be able to trade with and share with all the other producers because we've got a really vibrant food scene here in Mid-Coast Maine. Um, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. Uh,
Jeff,
yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like I've known you for so long and I just learned so much more about your pathway to being able to do this. I wanted to be able to open it up to questions from folks because we have some one-on-one sessions that are also coming up, and I'd love for anybody who has some questions with regard to any part of the process, please unmute or drop something in the chat, and we can Jeff can help to tackle that question if anybody has something.
If there's no obvious questions, I can let you guys know, some of the grains that we're using. We use quite a bit of obviously wheat. I could talk about wheat if you guys want, but we're using coarse rye, cracked rye, fine rye flour, rye flakes. So the milling for us is a big event. It's a big reason why we buy so much from Maine Grains, is that they're able to do different types of milling, and they offer those products that we might not necessarily be able to get a small farm to make us such a variety of different grinds. We're also using rolled oats, pastry wheats, whole spelt flour, spelt flakes. We have been getting we use like brand middlings quite a bit in just bench in our baskets. And we're using buckwheat, and we are able to get some kumut flours as well, and we use that in one of our breads. Um, and yeah, some of those are minor grains that we're not using a ton of. Cornmeal is not on that list, but we do use quite a bit of cornmeal, and that we found, there's more people that we can buy that from, and yeah, we love to use it. Some of those more expensive minor grains, the buckwheat, the kamut, the spelt. We do have there. It's harder to get them. We're always looking for people who are growing them that we might be able to get a hold of either the whole grain to do some sprouting or milling ourselves. We do have a small mill that we use occasionally, um, and also, pastry wheats and that sort of thing. I mean, I think there's what we found is even if they're a lot more expensive than the grains that we're typically buying in larger quantities that are available in larger quantities, we found that with it's hard to sell a single variety bread, and it will also be very hard for us to make money on a single variety bread. But what we found is that the quality of those grains are all so unique that we can figure out a way to incorporate them into a product that we can make some money on, that can, pay off the time it takes to work with it, And then offer it at a fair value for the customer. And often those grains we're using maybe 20 to 30% in a product. We've really been delighted with some of the stuff that we worked with from Rusted Rooster. It's been minimal, but we're working on getting more, and trying to come up with some stuff that we could do more regularly, with our market repertoire, things that we do, and maybe even just continue to create, because that's one of the things we really try to do. We try not to get too bogged down. We have kind of 5 core doughs that we do on just about every production day. But Yeah, we try to always leave a little bit of room to play around with other forms. We do pastry. It's about a third of our sales. Our market sales overall are in total are probably around a third direct market, a third to a half of our entire sales. The rest of it would be wholesale that we're doing to stores, a few food service outlets, and a catering company.
It's amazing. Anybody else have any questions? We have just a couple of minutes. I know this is a shorter session. We're still figuring out our flow of how and how much is the right time to set aside for these office hours. But I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions before we head into some one-on-one signups that have signed up to ask some individualized questions about their businesses. Does anybody have anything? Well, Jeff, I think it. Oh, go ahead, Anna.
Um, you said you have a supplier that you like to use in this area, Mid-Coast.
Yeah,
Who?
Down East Food Service, Down
Yeah.
East Foods out of Lewiston, Auburn area. I believe they're Auburn. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
they deliver once a week in our area. They have, for us, when we were in Waldoboro, we weren't going through enough quantity that it was that we were able to really go with them. But at that time, their minimum was low, and they came right through Waldoboro, and so we were able to use them. They've been a really good partner business for us. You know, they're yeah, like I said, if you're familiar with them, they mostly sell to bakeries, but they do also do this ice cream hustle through the summer as well. Um, yeah. One of the other things that we've been able to do with the bakery, speaking of ice cream, this past year we transitioned to using all organic milk, which we were able to partner with a local dairy. And that's been really nice. We don't use a ton of milk in our products, but for the market we do, and actually for some wholesale we do, like a burger bun. And for the market, we don't do laminated dough, but we do these sweet buns that are an enriched dough that is all milk based, whole milk. And we sell quite a bit of that between cinnamon rolls, cardamom buns. My wife does these amazing chocolate knots, and she's really the pastry whiz. But Yeah, it's been nice to go through that. The other thing about buying the bulk milk is we're getting in buckets, and we have a lot less waste that way. We're using Grace Pond Farm for that milk. They've been a really, really great partner.
Any other questions before we break?
Yeah, we're always on the lookout for more seeds. It's tricky to get the organic seeds. So if people are growing, like, when I say seeds, I guess I'm not talking about grain. I'm talking about sunflower, flax, pumpkin seeds. Those types of things are tricky for to find, and I also know they're tricky to process. But Yeah, we're always looking for interesting things to work with, to add into products. And it is hard to source that stuff. I mean, a lot of the times we used to get it through associated buyers, but it's become they shut down, and we haven't really been able to find a good replacement. And you can get it through Amazon, and so that's what we wind up doing some of the time. Down East is able to get us certain things, but especially if you're looking for to do 100% organic, it can be tricky to source those types of things.
Jeff, I want to say thank you so much. I know we could spend, I think, a lot longer talking about this, and I sort of wish maybe for the next session, we'll map out even more time to do this. But I
Yeah,
want
I
to
guess I
thank you.
didn't really talk about wheats and doughs, but yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to.
I think we perhaps we could even revisit this later later in the spring and do a follow-up session that speaks to that. I think that would be an excellent addition to the conversation. Um, in the interim, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to sign up. We still have time this afternoon. We have sessions right now until just after 1 o'clock. But I think at 1:15, 1:30, 1:45, there's some slots for 15-minute chats on any individualized questions that you might have. And I just want to thank you all for being a part of this. This is the first time that we've done something like this. And we're still, I think, tweaking everything that we'd like to make it as successful as it can for everyone who are joining us live and also who will be watching this video and the recap. But Jeff, thank you so much. That's so informative.
Thank you.
Really gives us some insight into the pathway of how to create a bakery that's focused on sourcing local organic grains. And it's fascinating to hear also, congratulations on the quantities. I mean, that tonnage from those suppliers is something to be so proud of. It really is making a huge difference on in our grain economy because of people like you.
Yeah, well, we've just ticked it up over the years, and every year we've been like, okay, can we get to this amount? And it's hard to forecast those things, but we've been kind of able to do it. And I mean, I think of it as like it's kind of I'm like, wait, did we really only grow that much? But you know, from year to year, it's yeah. Now I think in year 11 or 12 here, it's definitely a lot more. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I think hopefully if anybody wants to reach me as well via email, it's Brazen. Well, you could go on our website. We have a form submission at brazenbaking.com and be happy to hear from you that way.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we'll see you at the next office hours. Or hopefully tomorrow. We have an event tomorrow when Weeds Talk, another Zoom that will be a little bit longer from an expert author that Paul here has actually helped to set up. And so thank you in advance for being a part of our community, and we'll see you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.